I would like to welcome you all for our meeting or for our nice webinar, Enterprise LLMs, Architectures and Agents, specifically on looking into how to scale a company AI framework and create impact for a whole organization. I'm Marcel. I am actually a computer scientist who has worked on AI since before it was cool. So pre-LLM era, even pre-deep learning era, 2014 is where I got the first time really deep my hands into machine learning. That was where the deep learning, let's say the deep learning hype started. And now we are here 11 years later and everything has changed quite a bit. I am the head of a company called entAIngine, or the product is called entAIngine, the company is called Jane Data. We are a team of people here in Berlin, in Germany, but working worldwide. I have a lot of customers in the United States and in the UK at the moment. And my day-to-day business is implementing enterprise AI projects either together with an enterprise partner or for them. So either as a sparring partner, enabling them to be faster, scale faster, and have higher quality, or doing it by ourselves end to end. We delivered not a dozen real-world applications. We counted last week, and it was 48 real-world LLM-based applications since 2022. And we actually have a lot of experience from bringing projects not only to a proof of concept, but also to production. Yeah? I read last week a very nice article where it was saying that 90% of all LLM projects fail at companies right now. I think that was a study from Deloitte. Yeah, might be the issue of Deloitte, but honestly, it's not so far away from what I have seen for other companies too. But there are certain practices that are there and that you can abate to make your project or your projects, if you have a whole portfolio of different projects, successful. And that's what I would like to talk with you about, specifically for enterprises that not only have one application, but many different applications. I'm not going to tell you about today, this is ChatGPT, and ChatGPT has a large language model behind it. I'm not going to do that, but I would like to just briefly review the last 2.5, 3 years that we have seen here and what specifically ChatGPT has done. And it has triggered a lot of people getting interested in large language models and playing around with large language models and building use cases on with large language models. But we have evolved. We don't have the same discussions anymore like we had 2 years ago. We don't have discussions like, ooh, this is an LLM and it can hallucinate. Yes, we all know that. We have seen that. We have tested it out. We have found use cases where we can't live with hallucinations. We have use cases where we can live with hallucinations. And we have use cases where we can minimize our hallucinations by, for example, good prompt engineering or good RAG pipelines or good other things. And that's a lot of the state where companies are at the moment. I would like to show you a little bit of the 4 stages that I have seen a lot of companies go through that I was working with, but also others I was mentoring, how these stages are that they're going through in their AI journey. I would like to share a few learnings. I would like to talk about how these organizations usually set up AI teams, AI hubs, or do in which organizational setup they do AI in their company as a basis for a company AI framework. Here and there, I'm being contracted for companies that say, yeah, we want to get our hands into LLMs, into AI, but we first need a framework because we have a lot of regulatory issues that we need to address. We have a lot of boundaries. There's politics behind it, company politics, and we'd like to have a guideline of how we do AI. And then I'm going to talk about generalized versus specialized solutions. This session today is recorded. My wonderful assistant, Anna has her hands on the record button and already pressed, I believe. We are also here for questions at any point in time. I will do in the end a little bit of a bigger question round. If you have questions while I am talking in my keynote presentation, please feel free to put them in the meeting chat that you will see in your Zoom. I have this chat on my second screen on this side, so I will now and then look to my secondary screen and see if there's any questions that I can address right away, or if you have them in the end, we can also discuss them in the end. That's completely up to you. A lot of companies, not only enterprises, but companies or businesses of each side that at least have somewhat the motivation to get into the next stages of what they're doing, had at some point in time a ChatGPT moment where someone was introducing this technology to a larger board of people, or people were just playing around. We saw that a lot end of 2022, or other people working on different little, let's say, pet projects that sparked some interest and some conversation within a company. And that's what I call the ChatGPT moment. A ChatGPT moment where I say, ooh, I can summarize an email with an LLM, or ooh, this helps me with my insurance text and making sense of my insurance text. Usually these are very small, tiny experiments that people do and have some sort of a light bulb going off in their head that starts them to see a whole sea of different opportunities for potential gains and for potential strategic improvements in their company. And usually when you are in a company and have a bunch of stakeholders, at some point in time, this ChatGPT moment sparks a strategic decision to start exploring these AI opportunities more on a bigger scale. And this bigger scale is what, or let's say not a super huge scale, but at least either a small team, but not you sitting there alone anymore, is what I call the exploration phase. In exploration phase, we build proof of concepts quickly, and usually I have seen a lot of people that build proof of concepts with good first results. Yeah? But the exploration phase is usually then, let's say, succeeded by a phase where you need to get your proof of concepts actually into production. Yeah. So you're in a pre-production phase. And then you see that just prompting in ChatGPT for many use cases is just not enough. It's of course, there's a bunch of people that tell you, ooh, prompting is like using Word and everybody in the future needs to know exactly how to prompt. Well, there is a variation in prompts, and even if you tell people the same task, they will prompt differently. And the more variation we have in the people, the more variation we have in the prompts, and the more variation we have in the quality of output. And that's exactly not what we want to have when we would like to scale, because we would like to have consistent quality across the whole organization, never mind who's doing it. And that's often a setup where people start building stuff like prompt libraries and little things, but then realize what they need is sometimes a little bit more complex. And that's what I call the phase of maturing use cases and successful proof of concepts. And that's where also, let's say, all of these topics that get you out of your fever dream a little bit, where you see that, oh, it's all cool and it's all fun and it's going to make our lives easier. But then you have to talk about privacy, about data integration, about compliance, about security, about all of these things. And then people tell you, oh, you shouldn't use ChatGPT, the free version, because it uses your company data to learn if you use the free version, which it does. And there's a lot of complexity coming in that third stage. And then leads to companies that reach the fourth stage, where they realize that they need to scale the development and proof of concepts and productive apps on a more company-wide or at least department-wide scale within certain boundaries that they know they can have a high quality output, and they can have confidence that no rules, no compliance issues, no process problems are coming up during this process. And a lot of these people reaching the scale realize then, okay, it started as something, typing a little bit with ChatGPT on my phone and became just another part of our company IT landscape, and now we need to manage it. And that's what a lot of people saw in the first AI wave, and organizations have played the first wave of AI that is already over, I would say, for most of the people. They played around, get acquainted with the fundamentals of generative AI, what it means, because the paradigm shift of that you can have something that is producing potentially hallucinated results is very important for your business processes behind it, and also for your engineering to minimize that. But that's a very big mindset shift. Found value, and a lot of organizations have started after the first AI wave see the potential for AI in the organization. And what is in this case or in this stage also very important to see is that what people have done with AI in their organization. So what the people were doing, not the organization itself. People build an understanding of generative AI, of large language models, and saw also how it will improve their work. And they have positioned themselves in that. So There's a lot of people that ask me, oh, will AI replace all my employees? No, not all of them. But in the end, there is an undeniable shift to the workforce by using generative AI. But unfortunately, the easy solution of not using AI to keep all of your workers happy is not the solution, because your competitors will. That's a little bit of an understanding that a lot of people in organizations go through. I have a lot of discussions, augmentation versus replacement versus scalability. And depending on how people engage with the technology, they get a certain position within the organization, or some are really pushing and seeing it as a career opportunity to become an AI leader in themselves, versus some say, okay, whatever they give me, I will just use it and I'm being told. And others that are positioning themselves more adversarial to this technology, for example, problems in having fear of being replaced or other things. Yeah, I see a lot of people that say, this is all completely unnecessary and not to think about. But there is companies that are laying off people right now because some of the work could be taken over by AI. Just saying that doesn't exist is neglecting reality. Yeah, saying that there's a way forward, that AI will go bust and not be there anymore in the next couple of years, is also completely ignoring reality. So people find their position, people understand, and work with that. How I'm talking now about AI in terms of large language models, in terms of generative AI. I'm not talking about it necessarily from, let's say, prediction models or other models. In here, I'm talking now purely about LLM or generative AI applications in general. And I would like to talk a little bit about the organization. And we have different setups how initiatives and groups and people are organized in larger organizations. One of these options is the centralized AI department. The centralized AI department has a lead and usually a mandate from either C-level or pretty high people within a certain company that have made a strategic decision to work on the implementation of AI projects on a larger scale, and they need somebody to give this mandate to. And with the centralized approach, we have a centralized department for that, what I call here AI department, that is then supporting the actual departments that have the use cases, coordinate and build use cases, maybe for them or maybe together with them. These generalized AI departments often build generalized solutions first. I cannot tell you how countless times I have seen company name GPT, company name chatbot for everybody to use so that they can prompt. That's a nice generalized solution, but also that can be managed and maintained by a AI department. But often this is not getting you into the actual real interesting and use cases that have a real lever where you need to build something specific. Yeah? It has, of course, pros. Yeah, you have single responsibility. If you want to start out, this is great. But you have also challenges that come with it regarding prioritization, regarding scaling, and regarding enabling people to do it themselves. The whole other extreme is that we are seeing decentralized AI departments where I say, okay, everybody can just use whatever tool they want, work independently, and build something. This has one very valuable pro, and that's that these users are actually solving real problems. Yeah, they are not coming from a tool and are looking where to find this tool. They have a problem and they are looking for tools to find this problem. Yeah, instead of, which leads to much closer impact to cases that are there versus we have a tool and we try to apply it. You have more agency from stakeholders that are then, let's say, on a lower level, but in a specific department, experienced professionals and experienced and really focused professionals on that, say. But you can also run into the problem that you have a wild growth of different solutions that you can't get a hold of anymore. You have issues regarding compliance and oversight. If you have a centralized solution, you don't have that, or you don't have that to that extent, because you have one single party, one single organizational unit that is responsible. Here you have then many people that are responsible and you need to coordinate against themselves. And you have also cost inefficiencies. And as it is for every presentation where you have one extreme and another extreme, and the presenter gives you to say there is also a halfway solution between each of them that kind of tries to mitigate all of them. Here is my slide for the hybrid approach. there is what that I have seen more and more in the last 6 to 8 months coming up is that people have an AI department, but they are not building all of the applications centrally. So the AI department is there to basically be the compliance and regulatory and procurement single point of AI for an organization, but they are working with what I call AI champions in different departments to build very specific solutions for these specific departments. That's what I have seen more and more, and that's a little bit depending on how you do this trade-off. That can be a very good solution because you combine the pros, you have agency, and you have the target. But when you have a lot of people that are responsible for overlapping things, you sometimes have conflicts within the organization who says, okay, I want to be the AI head here, and somebody else says, no, I want to position myself. So you can have these type of conflicts. If they're positive or negative in an organization, it's up to you to decide. But that's generally the organizational approach that I've seen. And I have seen a little bit of a discussion in the chat. Matt is saying, we have run into the risk of being expressed that user could ask the AI to spit out other users, searches and reports. Have you dealt that before? That's an interesting case. It depends on how you are managing sessions and how you do organizational management. So we built a platform on our side where we have different chat sessions that these chat sessions are making calls to, for example, the OpenAI in Microsoft Azure or to Gemini. And we have worked on specific authorization workflows, like sharing old chats with a certain group or a certain organizational unit so that your chats are public within a certain user group that either have certain roles or that belong to the same apartment, versus making them completely private versus just making them shareable on point. There's different types of strategies that are there, but generally I am on a technical level. It is more on how you implement it governance wise on your side. I don't have at the moment any big headache when you're using a standard solution like Microsoft Copilot, the enterprise version at least. There you can control the level of data sharing within an organization to a very granular way. If you're using a public solution like ChatGPT, I would never tell anybody to use the free ChatGPT version for enterprise use cases. That's just a bad practice. And the real implementation really belongs on how we are doing that. Yeah? And I would not make over generalized statements on chatbots. Don't share one search with others. Depends how it's configured. It just depends on, it's not that a chatbot cannot technically access what you have there. It's depending on how it's configured and how it's implemented. It can be that. We have use cases that we have implemented over the past where it made a lot of sense that people could see by default the chats of the other people. Yeah. Specifically in exploration phases, just that they scroll over and see what other people are doing. That's there. And all of the other statements you have to make specifically for a very specific product. ChatGPT, Gemini, ChatGPT Enterprise, depending on it. There's no overgeneralization of that principle possible, in my opinion. And I would rather discourage from doing so. Yeah, I see. Yeah, Matt, thank you. If there's no questions to this point, I would like to talk about the boundaries of AI within an organization. I am often contracted by organizations, often by public organizations, so where a lot of civil servants are, or companies that have private companies that have a certain size, where I'm being asked to create a document that dictates the AI framework and how people in an organization should work with AI. And after having done that quite a few times, I can give you an overgeneralized, let's say, concept of when you have to build an AI framework. I'm not talking here about a technical framework, but also a legal, ethical, organizational, compliance, and quality and risk framework, how that looks like. And these are exactly the components that I always see over there. The AI framework should be basically the guide, the manual on how we do AI within an organization. And it has basically a boundary that gives out the limits. And this boundary is made of concepts of organization and governance, ethics, compliance and regulation, and quality and risk. And then it has an inner part, which is more of the tech part of how we build AI-powered applications and how we and what technology framework are we using for that. And what a lot of people are missing out on or forgetting about is actually evaluation and monitoring what you are doing. Not only regarding quality, but also regarding costs, regarding adoption, regarding impact, and regarding improvements. I think it's a very important thing to understand that right now, a lot of the AI credits that you are buying in from credit-based solutions, or a lot of the prices that where you have somewhere internally something token specific. For example, ChatGPT Pro, they have internally a certain range of tokens that are within the user limits for the different subscription levels. And these usually follow unit economics. And what a lot of people that I have seen are just neglecting is that, oh, this is a flat fee and it will always cost exactly this amount of money. What you have to understand is that a lot of AI applications right now that you are buying and integrating into your stack, from ChatGPT over Claude, over if you're doing Cursor for vibe coding or so, are heavily subsidized by these companies to stipulate usage. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of Cursor, implementing a lot of stuff with Cursor. It is not super easy to do enterprise level vibe coding, but after some time you get around how to actually use these tools to produce good usable code and actually have an improvement in there. So there is a quite steep learning curve. By the way, if you are interested in the topic of enterprise web coding, please feel free to type that in the chat or put that somewhere in an email when we are going to make a follow-up with you folks, because I'm thinking about making a webinar on enterprise vibe coding. So there's a lot of people that use these type of tools in a way that they think it's either a flat fee or it's costs that are neglectable. Maybe at the moment they are, but we have here the situation of companies that are building you these AI tools, subsidizing it so that you to stipulate usage. Also, OpenAI is doing that. But in the end and over time, when this market is maturing, you will see that there will be changes in the cost structure of that. And that's the point where tech people have to start to understand and look into unit economics, which often is, which I've seen in some organizations to be a challenge. But that's something that I would recommend to keep in mind from the beginning. There is a whole course actually on building your own company AI framework. If that's something that you're interested in, Anna, maybe you can post our Udemy course in the chat, and we have in the end, we have also a link to it where I'm going really deep into details of this company AI framework. If you need a whole framework for your company to make sure how to govern and how to work with AI, depends on your company. I can't tell you that, but I tell you, if your company requires something like that, these are the main boxes that you have to think about. According to my experience, might be different how these boxes look, or the content of these boxes look in different organizations, depending also on the industry that they are. We have people here in critical infrastructure, so that might quality and risk might look there a lot different than a company that is doing content creation on this side. And yeah, that's basically it. I will go into the next slide, but I saw we have a bunch of questions. Do we have access to the presentation slides? Yes, Alex, we will send out the slides and we will send out the recording. Don't worry. How do you maintain ethics within your framework? I could give you a 3-hour lecture only on how to do that. But that would completely evaporate our timeline from today. I'm happy to provide you with content, happy to have a follow-up with you on that part specifically, but it is we have a 9-part concept of that's rather complex. That's nothing that I can explain to you now in 5 minutes, unfortunately. Sorry, Horatio. But what I would like to get into today a little bit more is generalized solutions and specialized solutions, because that's rather important for when you are building or when you are scaling AI applications within an organization. So generalized solutions, general purpose applications that are generally available for many use cases. So people that use Microsoft Copilot, in the end, Copilot is a generalized solution, ChatGPT 2. Also built-in AI features like transcribe my meeting or AI summarizations of text or an email drafting. These are all generalized solutions because they're not specific on a specific use case, but you can rather use them in many different contexts. These generalized solutions are heavily pushed by hyperscalers. Yeah, Microsoft specifically, they're trying to triage everybody of their customers into, is this a Copilot customer? Is this a Copilot Studio customer? Or is this a customer where we need to build something specific with the OpenAI API or another type of API? Example here is the classical My Company GPT, where you have the chat application. On the other hand, we are talking about specialized solutions where we have solutions per business process that requires more advanced orchestrations. And often it's not one prompt, but often it's a step of different interactions with different models and also different existing systems to get data, to do retrieval augmented generation, getting information in there and has then the complexity that comes from it. These use cases are for, let's say, are very time intensive to build, but have also a lot of value in them if you have a use case that scales. And I made here a little bit of a diagram. We have here on the left side, so that the x-axis tells you how generalized the solution is versus how specialized the solution is. Generalized, our company chatbots, AI features in existing tools and emails. Here we have specific point solutions for specific processes. I have, for example, a company where I am writing real estate appraisals with. Yeah, they can't do that with ChatGPT because it requires every time for each paragraph of that real estate appraisal, it requires 8 steps plus external data that you have to ingest. So this is more of a business process automation, large language models type of research. We have a lot of projects where we are doing deep research. For example, we have a pharma company with which we are doing target identification and indication expansion by searching. So that's basically a use case where you have done internally some research on a certain gene or a lab chemical, but your research was not successful. So you're looking if there's any publication anywhere openly published in the world of anybody who has found another application for that specific gene or chemical that you have. That's a very specific thing. We have implemented something like that with also a series of different steps with deep research models, with specific RAG models, with a lot of different parts to that. But that's a very use case specific specialized application. And then you have here in the semi-specialized yet reusable processes in an organization like reports, accounting, and analysis. Of course, the more specialized the solution is that you implement, the less amount of... I'm sorry, can you mute yourself, please? Thank you. The less amount of use cases you have, of course, for that specialized use case, but the more impact the individual solution for the individual use case has. And for the early stages of people working on AI use cases, we have seen mostly them focusing on these generalized solutions. But as the market is maturing and as companies are maturing with AI, this is where the real value lies. Yeah, this is where the real value is. They are more complex to implement, but when you choose to write applications for it and you implement it in an efficient way, you can get here a lot of return on investment very quickly. And I work actually in my day-to-day life on both of these types of use cases. We have an enterprise AI platform. It's called entAIngine, Enterprise AI Process Engine, that basically powers different types of applications, chat applications, but also applications with, you see here, workflows, workflow automation, and all can be built with no code whatsoever in here. I'm saying this just to give you a perspective also where I'm getting all of this information from and where I'm getting these experience from. We work with a lot of different models. I'm not a big fan of saying, oh, we are Microsoft House and we are only going to use OpenAI for everything that we are doing. There is models right now that are better or worse for certain use cases, and restricting you for that is giving you a very specific bias then in the applications that you do. We work a lot with documents, with creating reports and the different archetypes of applications with a low-code builder and auto-generated frontends that makes all of the building process a little bit quicker. I would like to just you over here. This is not a complete marketing and sales slide, but has also some educational value, I believe. This is how the structure looks of the platform that we have built. So we have here specific front ends. We have this no-code front end that I've shown you on the other slide. And we have other types of applications like a chat applications and process forms and editor applications and also other custom front ends that in the end make all their API calls whenever there's a user interaction to one single REST API. And behind this API, we have basically a repository of different use case templates. You can see it like a process, but also for chat interactions. In the end, if you have a chat with retrieval augmented generation with RAG pipelines, every execution of this RAG pipeline is also just a process in itself, yeah, when you think about it in that way. And in the middle of all of that is what we call the engine. And the engine is a very generalized but modular and a piece of software that can take different use cases and different templates, execute them, and basically forward them to all of the providers that we use. In our case, we use OpenAI, we use everything that we can get from Microsoft OpenAI service. We use also Google models, we use Deep Infra for open source models, we use Perplexity, and allow customers also to bring their own models. Yeah? And the important thing is to see here that this orchestration engine is not only doing stuff with AI, but it's also connecting to existing systems, getting your documents from your SharePoint that you have, getting the knowledge out of databases that are already there. You need to really see, I would say, the AI and LLM platform that either you are building or that you are buying in as one part as your normal IT infrastructure and IT landscape that you have. That's that's a realization that people come to when they see that it's not only about the model that dictates the quality, but it's a lot about the orchestration of how you're using this model. What system prompts are you using? Are you chaining prompts together? How are you inserting data into this model? How is your RAG pipeline configured? These are all things that dictate and the last one, of course, prompts. What are the prompts that you actually use? These are often, for many use cases, as critical as choosing the right model. Yeah. And that's what a lot of people tend to forget. And we built an application, right, that we basically sell to enterprises as a SaaS or deploy it on premise completely, depending on what it is, and to make it fit to existing user infrastructures. But we came to that architecture by working with quite a lot of enterprises, with quite a lot of customers over time, and it all boils down to the same blocks always over and again. That's why I thought it would be a good idea to share that today. I would like to give you as a closing statement here, my quick learnings. The one or a bunch of different learnings that we made over the last 3 years. There is not the one model to rule them all. There are different models that are good for certain tasks and others that are completely terrible at it. There's models that are very expensive. There's models that are very cheap. There is no one model to rule them all. It's not, we are using ChatGPT for everything. If you're using it for use cases where ChatGPT is good, you might be in luck. If not, it might be a different situation. Gemini 2.5 Pro is very good at reasoning for long text. Perplexity is far superior in web search related tasks to the ChatGPT version with web search. Yeah, if you say, okay, we have this deep research where ChatGPT can actually do web search, I tell you, Perplexity is factor 10 better than what you get with OpenAI. Far superior. A model that is, in my opinion, completely underestimated. Sorry, I have no affiliation whatsoever with them. I just use them in a lot of different use cases, and they are great. Standalone tools and the models behind are different. Yeah, they use the same model but different orchestrations, and that's I think for a lot of people the first thing that they need to realize. on that level when they want to go into enterprise. You have very rarely a use case for fine-tuning models. Many people think, okay, if I need to get my knowledge inside a model, I need to fine-tune a model. Now, actually, the best use case for that is using retrieval augmented generation, using RAG. Fine-tuning is very good if you would like to make your model speak a certain language or use certain phrases, but not for ingesting verifiable information into it. That's my learning. If you're locking yourself into one vendor, you have a dependency that will put you back. I think I've iterated over that quite a lot of times. Orchestration is much more critical than the model itself. I've also said that before, but it's so important that I have it here again. And multi-step, multi-module applications are the go-to approach for specific tasks. And the one last important thing that I would say here is more about in organization, and that's technology is often not the bottleneck of an AI. The thing that makes or breaks it is all of the stuff. Can you organize? Can you create a governance structure around it? Data privacy, talking with different people, having different agendas. These are all things that are often more painful than AI itself in these type of projects. And if you are in, I call it an AI hub, an internal organizational unit that is building different applications or enabling others to build different applications. I know that you're often flooded by internal requests for specialized apps and you can't handle it. So often people just have, here's our company GPT, now help yourselves. There's a lot of value in having applications like no-code based applications where you can democratize application building further in there. I see we're having a lot of different questions that I'm going into in a second, but this is before I'm getting into that, I would like to give you here my slide for a bunch of different contexts for you. If you need help in your company right now with AI, either on implementation or on consulting or on strategy, feel free to call me. You can book a meeting here with me. Directly links to my Calendly. I've been doing literally nothing else for the past 3 years, and I've seen from companies from 3 people to companies with 300,000 people, everything. I can tell you. If you need help on any of these topics, feel free to book something. If you would like to get a specialized application built, I have a whole team of developers behind me that build applications from proof of concept to production. We have an own no-code tool that's called entAIngine that I've shown very quickly, that I'm happy to show to you specifically if you have the problem that you want to scale your application building, that you would like to look into no-code tools. Maybe you have looked into N8N or solutions like that too. I would put us in kind of the same class of applications, but we have a different spin that is more enterprise focused than the, let's say, the N8N put up your sleeves and just fiddle anything together that doesn't fall apart approach. If you would like to learn more about strategy, about frameworks, about AI hubs, about ethics in there, I have a whole course on that, but I'm also happy to talk with you in person about these type of topics. There's a course on Udemy, and I think we even have a promotion running right now. Very inexpensive to go through. If you just want to stay connected with me, here's my LinkedIn. And if there's anything else, feel free to send an email.